And joining me from GMIT is Katie O'Dwyer, who lectures on several of the modules in second year. And I've asked Yulia Young, who was a second year student last year, to join as well to provide perhaps some student perspective, or perhaps answer questions that would be best answered by a student rather than assuming that staff would know the answer. I suppose at the outset, we all understand the situation that higher education institutions find themselves in, and this particular program, by its nature, with a large amount of mobility and multiple institutions in multiple jurisdictions at multiple stages of their management of the response to the public health crisis, requires imaginative solutions to try and deliver on the program. And the key, I suppose, a fundamental component of the decision making in GMIT was the early provision of certainty to the students based on the framework that was being delivered to us from the management in GMIT, the scenario planning that we had to take into account. And then we looked at the options that were there and how best could we provide certainty to students as quickly as possible so that they may commence planning. We were presented with 4 scenarios. The first being that everything would be as normal, and that would be scenario 1, that there would be no change from last year. Scenario 2 was that 50% of the material would be, of the practicals would be online, and 100% of, or 50% of the teaching would be online, and the practicals would be face-to-face. And scenario 3 was a combination of both, of both practicals and teaching online. And scenario 4, that for whatever reason we were forced to close again in the early part of next semester, or the mid to late part of next semester, that we were forced to close again, and everything would have to suddenly transition to online in the same way it had to suddenly transition to online in mid-March in the part of that semester. So that was the framework we were faced with, one of those 4 options. The second thing we consider then is the students. How are we going to adapt this? How are we going to fit the students into this? Or how can we consider the students? What's best for the students? And given that many of you will be from, I don't think there's anybody there from Ireland. So many of you, all of you will be traveling or would have been traveling to Ireland. And we were conscious that if we suddenly had to transition into 4, which is a distinct possibility into scenario 4 with no contact on campus at all permitted, that you would have traveled for no reason. You would have traveled to remain in accommodation in Galway from the campus point of view, which would be suboptimal for you. And we felt it would be unfair to expect you to turn up for what we might be able to deliver. So we might be able to bring you on campus, or we might not. So because you all would have to travel, we said we will do this online. So that's how we reached our decision. And we didn't do that lightly. We took a long time to think about it and what was best for the students and what was fairest for everybody, and that we would go 100% online for the modules. And we looked at the modules that we have, and we felt for the second year students, we can deliver these online. Now, what that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean you can't come to Galway. You are, of course, subject to national and international travel regulations and availability, free to travel to Galway. And those of you that require letters for visa applications or anything like that, we will process those, no problem at all. We have no issue doing that. But bear in mind, at the moment, there is a requirement, a legal requirement, to self-isolate for 2 weeks, to fill out quite a detailed information on your personal circumstances and where you will be staying and how you can be contacted when you arrive in Ireland. And failure to do that is classed as an offence at the moment. So if you don't abide by those, and if that legislation is still in place, you will have to comply with it. Now, that legislation is present at the moment for the situation we find ourselves in now. In 1 month, 2 months, in 3 months, in August, that legislation probably will be amended to some other form of rule or regulation. But I imagine there will still be some form of self-isolation required for the 2 weeks that you arrive. And how they will police that, I do not know, but I imagine that will still be the case if you are going to come to Galway. So we have 2 streams. I think there was 28, 27, 28, I can't remember, students that want to come, mostly conservation. We get a lot of students for conservation and less so for management. And the program board has met and has gone down through the modules, and we have agreed that how we will do it, what we will do it. At the moment, the staff that teach in the program boards are being bombarded by GMIT in a good way with training opportunities for them to enhance their ability to teach online, to adopt to new technologies for online teaching and remote teaching, to enrich the content that's provided and the experience that will be provided. And I have no doubt that my colleagues will rise to the occasion and will deliver an excellent learning experience for those of you that wish to enroll in Galway or retain a second year in Galway. So I mean, that's the summary of how we got to being 100% online. The current situation, the options provided to us by GMIT management, our consideration of students having to travel, and not wishing to impose unnecessary travel on students. So if you wish to remain in whatever country you happen to be in at the moment, or whatever country you plan to be in September and engage with the program, fine. If you wish to travel to Ireland, notwithstanding the regulations or rules that apply around travel at the time, you're also more than welcome to do so. And we will provide letters for any visa or anything, I suppose, any administrative requirements for visa, etc., that are in force at the time. I don't know. I mean, at the moment, non-EEA students or students requiring a visa, and not all non-EEA students require a visa, but students that require a visa, their period of residency has been extended, I think, for up to 3 months and perhaps even more, on the basis that the visa processing or the immigration offices are currently closed, to my knowledge. So they have been given a blanket renewal of their permission to reside at the moment. Whether or not the visa application process will be efficient as it should be this year, I don't know. I honestly don't know the answer to that question. At the moment, they are, however, taking applications for our stay back program. So where non-EEA students wish to remain within Europe after being awarded with a degree from an Irish higher education institute, we have a 1 year or 2 year, depending on if it's master or PhD, etc., stay back program. So we're processing applications for those at the moment from 3 or 4 of the current second years that will be awarded. It is a joint degree, so it is a degree from an Irish higher education institution. And that permits them to stay within Ireland for the next year after they've completed their degree. So there seems to be some activity at the immigration level or the visa level. I've already presented, I suppose back in December, I presented the modules and what we will be offering, and you're familiar with the modules that will be delivered in GMIT, or I can talk about those if you want. The practical components, I suppose, if I consider the practical components, which I'm sure some of you are interested in. If we take the conservation stream at the moment, or first of all, acoustic techniques as a marine conservation tool, the practical element of that was really computer-driven data analysis of acoustic data and methods for interpreting and analyzing bioacoustic signals from marine organisms. The practical component of animal behavior, recording and analysis, which is another conservation module, involved using model organisms in the laboratory, which were hermit crabs is the species, is the animal used as a model organism. And it involved designing the experiment, implementing the experiment, recording the data, and then analyzing it. And that then will be replicated, I suppose, in all aspects other than the actual using of the animals, the hermit crabs. No animals are harmed in these experiments, of course. We return the hermit crabs to roam free along the plains with the lions and the tigers and the bears, and they're finished. We don't worry about them. They're not going to get hurt. So those are the two aspects of that program that had heavy practical component, I suppose, or practical sessions that involved, I suppose, sitting in a laboratory in some respects. Now, where we do recognize there will be some limitations will be in the field element, that there would have been a field trip associated with animal behavior recording and analysis. And the model organism that they use for that is common or harbor seals. So observing harbor seal behavior as part of a group. And that obviously will be harder to do. But we will look at other methods of doing that, perhaps by producing video footage of harbor seal behavior that you would then be able to analyze as if you were analyzing the behavior in the field. And if you just hold on 1 second, sorry. So, sorry, slight interruption. Domestic arrangement. Sorry. So where was I? So we will look at mechanisms to do that. The same for, I suppose, seabird and marine mammal population census techniques, which is another very practical module. There would have been some theoretical instruction in that module, and then the practical component would be on the ship. We would have done a seabird and marine mammal survey, single platform opportunity, or dedicated platform surveys on a research vessel. That's always a risk every year because it's weather dependent. We don't always get out to do that field trip. We don't always get onto the ship because of the limitations of the capacity of the vessel and the weather conditions in the west of Ireland at that time of the year. And again, we are looking at methods whereby we can replicate that experience of recording and observing, surveying seabirds and marine mammals at sea. And I spent 2 days this week at sea recording footage using a 360-degree camera to try and create a similar experience whereby you will be able to see what we would have seen on survey and then observe and then record the data and use that technique and learn the techniques to replicate that experience. I agree it's suboptimal, it's not on the ship, but it is always a risk. We don't get out on the ship every year anyway. If I then, the GIS module, which used to be in second year with us, is now replaced by a species distribution modeling module. And again, that would have been data driven, it would have been computer driven, and will remain so. There wouldn't have been a laboratory practical or a field element to that in that subject. The other subjects for conservation don't have significant practical or field components. In the management stream, there is, I suppose, the largest, or I suppose the most computational aspect is the stats module with Colleen Minto, and this is an extraordinarily popular module every year. I think in the last 10 years, the soliloquies that have been recited about Colleen's effectiveness as a teacher for stats are legend. And I have no doubt that Colleen's patience and his diligence and his ability to impart knowledge in a patient, practical, considered way will also be replicated when he delivers that module in an online fashion. Julia there is agreeing with Colleen's abilities. Ecology of top predators is another management module that would have had a field trip associated with it. Again, weather dependent. It doesn't always take place. We don't always have the capacity for it. And that really the ecology of top predators is I suppose the practical was the management people were a little bit concerned they weren't getting to see the whales and dolphins that perhaps the conservation people were getting to see. So we would try and run a trip for them on that. But again, it's weather dependent, doesn't always happen. I don't think it happened last year, for example, but in previous years, it didn't. Again, it must have been weather. But in previous years, it would have happened. And it is a day trip to the southwest coast to look at, I suppose, habitats that are designated for the protection of particular species. Looking at birds, marine mammals, seals, cetaceans. And how their habitat is affected by pressures such as harvesting, tourism, renewable energy, etc. The rest of that module is there's no practical component to it. Then within, I suppose, life history strategies and secondary impacts of harvest on wild populations and ecosystems, those are very participatory, I suppose, engagement required modules where you have to debate, discuss, engage with your peers within a group setting, and that we hope, replicate in an online environment. In fact, we can replicate it within an online setting. We've no real concerns about that, and the staff will go to great lengths to make sure that process is inclusive and supportive, and you are facilitated to engage in those modules. Other than that, I can't really add any more information other than we too are facing the challenge that you are facing in making decisions that aren't always we aren't always able to achieve all that we want to achieve in life and in the time we have available and in the opportunities that we find ourselves in, but we will make the most of what we can do with the people we will do it with. And I think it's always, one of the things I go by is the things we achieve in life are second to the people we experience them with. So we would hope to generate a community. You're already a strong community of students because you know each other, you're participating in the student board, and you have student meetings, etc. And we would hope to continue that. And I think Julia and other second years will say GMIT is an inclusive, friendly staff. It's first name basis. It's very informal. We are very open and adaptable people, and we hope that we will replicate that again in the coming semester. But recognize, I think you have to recognize that we too will be under, we will be facing a challenging situation whereby we are trying to do the best job we can with the time and resources we have available. We're proposing a start date of the 21st of September with a provisional finish date of the 18th of December. Now these are slightly later than previous years, but we are faced with national, I suppose, restrictions or national guidance on first year undergraduate starting dates. And GMIT has been working towards a start date of the 28th for its undergrads, 28th of September. But we think we can make a start a little bit earlier and get the teaching done and get the assessment done within the 13 weeks. We don't have any final exams in our modules. It's 100% continuous assessment, and the assessment takes place within the 13 weeks. Cat Griswold's got a wonderful looking roof there, whatever's going on. So that's all I have to say. I mean, other than I can start to answer questions now. So I suppose if you want to ask a question, maybe write it in the chat that you want to ask a question, or ask the question. If that's okay, Lisa?
Yeah, it's better to ask the question.
Well, Lotte Janssens has asked, will we be able to do the practical things and field trips we will miss? For example, a week with practicals next year in July.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah, we haven't foreseen that. No, that we haven't foreseen that. It's very likely that GMIT and other academic institutions, though they may be in denial at the moment, will be online in semester 2 as well. And if I'm being frank, I'll be surprised if we have face-to-face teaching next year as well. I know that's a controversial thing to say, but I would be very surprised if we have face-to-face teaching next year as well.
Yeah.
Unless the management of this public health situation changes drastically, and for the better. I think we are faced with a period of disruption that will last the next 12 to 18 months, and we will have to adapt accordingly.
Yeah, of course, it's just sad that we can't go to Galway now.
No, you can come to Galway if you wish. That I said that at the start. That we're not saying you mustn't come to Galway. What we are saying is you can come to Galway, but you can't come to the campus. Yeah.
But if there would be a way that we could still do the field trips, maybe it would be possible.
Yeah. You see, again, this then the word you use, the perfect word there, maybe, and maybe is uncertainty, and I can't say maybe, because if I say maybe, someone may then make a decision based on, well, you said maybe we could do it, and now we can't do it, and I made the decision because you said maybe. So I have to try and provide certainty, and my certainty is no, it won't be taking place, and I'm as disappointed as the students would be. IMBRSea and its predecessors are a breath of fresh air in our department, and it's wonderful to welcome in. Last year we welcomed 55 students, and it's transformative for our department. We really enjoy working with the international students, and many of our PhD students graduate from IMBRSea, and we recruit them as PhD students into our programs, and we hope that will still continue. Just because you're not going to be here doesn't mean you won't be a GMIT student.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions if you want to pop up there?
Hi, good morning. It's afternoon now. I'm just curious, how do the modules run? Do they run simultaneously, or do you do just consecutively?
That's an excellent question. I think in the early part of the semester, so the first week, I think certainly modules like acoustics will be running as a block. Colleen's stats module tends to run as 2 discrete blocks, week on week. Sometimes some modules run intermittently, and it is one of the, I suppose, I won't say, it is an area where we could improve our sequencing of the modules. But we are conscious that you won't all be where you are now. You won't all be in Galway. And some of you may be in widely differentiating time zones. So we will try and develop a delivery that takes account of the fact that you may be in multiple locations using different time zones. So we would use an asynchronous model so that the material will be available for you to engage with as you can. However, within that, there will be requirements for engagement in a timed fashion to allow you to proceed to the later sections of the module. That you can't just step into the last week of the lecture without having engaged with the earlier part of it. So I think for some modules, there may be almost continual weekly 1 or 2 bits going on, and then for other modules there will be it's just that for the week, and then there may be something else, and then just that again for the following week. So when you look at, for example, the stats module for the management stream, I think it works out at about 4 mornings and 4 afternoons, and then an in-class assessment, and then another 4 mornings, another 4 afternoons, and another in-class assessment. Or I think he also gives a piece of work to be completed subsequently, which is generally used to revolve around generating data sets that would be relevant for your thesis and then analyzing that. But what we will do at the start of the program, or if not beforehand, as soon as I can pull it together with my colleagues, is present you with a draft schedule or a draft outline of what the assessments are likely to be, when they're likely to be, what they're likely to be worth, and how we will deliver on the module. Does that answer your question, Jane?
Yeah, it certainly does. I just have one more question regarding material, like notes, or if there's any existing material that could be shared with us prior to classes start. I mean, just to sort of get a jump on things before classes start at the end of September.
Absolutely. And when we use Moodle as the learning environment in GMIT, and we will, I suppose, people place notes, reading material, etc. on that. And what we can do in this situation, I suppose, is I can talk to the module coordinators and say, if we can use a sort of a flipped classroom approach whereby there's material presented for you to engage with prior to the, if it's face-to-face or prior to an asynchronous lecture, that you are better prepared for it. Yeah, I will certainly take that on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bianca has asked, will you offer tutoring to help students manage the use of complex software, acoustic software? Yes, I mean, we don't just say, there's the software, go in and use it. So Joanne that teaches that, she uses Raven, Adobe Audition, a few other software packages that as a GMIT student, you'll be given a license for, and she will teach how to use it. One of the other things we will do is we use a lot of peer learning, whereby you're in a group and you learn from and with each other with the facilitation of the lecturer. So yes, there will be tutoring to help learn the use of the complex software, yes. Does that answer your question, Bianca? Okay, any other questions?
Hi, you mentioned that there will be all the material online or on Moodle. I was wondering, you were also saying about possible live lessons. Will that be considered? I know there's obviously different time zones, maybe for different students, but do you think there will be a possibility to have some live lessons as well with professors?
Yes, I think the exact manner for each module may differ, but I think there will be a series of asynchronous material that is available for you to access, and then perhaps tutorial or group sessions at different times whereby students can engage with the person that's leading the module and ask questions or receive feedback or discuss what's been covered in the material, etc. Yes, there would be. Certainly, it won't be completely 100% asynchronous that you will never get to speak to the tutor. That definitely will not be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Gosh, you're all very quiet. Any questions for Julia? Are there estimations about the number of hours for class per week? Will it be? Are there estimations about the, so Kat Griswold has asked, are there estimations about the number of hours of class per week? Will it still be full-time, or perhaps will there be additional time for job or internship? So another good question. It's important to remember that as second years, your taught component for semester 3 comprises 18 ECTSs. Now, 18 ECT for I suppose that GMIT would be responsible for. 18 ECTSs would not be considered a full-time load. In parallel with doing your 18 ECTSs, you also have to do the thesis preparation module, and that takes up some of your time as well. It's not for me to say whether or not an individual, based on their circumstances, should or should not be working during their fourth year, or during their second year of their master thesis. And some people are master degree, and some people are better able to do that than others, and some people have to do it with it for no choice. They must work. And I would say, if you think you would like to, then yes. I mean, I think yes, it's a balance between college work, social life, domestic duties, domestic roles, whatever it is, your family situation, and then employment or job or internship. And you make a decision as an adult as to what is the best mix for you, and then you implement that decision. And if you find, for example, that perhaps your college work is suffering, or that your home life is suffering, or that your work is suffering, that you then change the situation that you find yourselves in for the better. But as an adult, that you approach it in a mature fashion and make it the best decision that suits your circumstances at that time. But yeah, I would never say to a person that was engaged in full-time education that you shouldn't work outside of your full-time education, because people sometimes have to work as well as doing college, and that's completely understandable. Not at all. Any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, I have another one.
Yeah, go ahead.
How are we going to be evaluated? And if we're having exams, I'm assuming these will be online as well?
Yeah, I said at the start, we don't have any exams in GMIT in semester 3 of the MSc program. We feel that by the time you've got to the second year of a master degree, you've already sat enough exams. We don't need to use that model to assess learning outcomes. So we use a 100% continuous assessment model. And the types of assessments we use are individual and group projects, presentations, individual and group, reports, laboratory reports or experimental reports. I encourage students to, and reward them with marks, to do a Seabird podcast in one of my modules. So each staff uses a variety of methods, but it's all continuous assessment. So there won't be a situation whereby you're sitting in a proctored or moderated environment against the clock trying to do an exam. I wouldn't foresee that being the case. We haven't in the past implemented that kind of assessment module for our master program. I don't think we're going to start doing it now, which would require even more, I suppose, changes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Bianca, I'm very sorry. You probably mentioned it. What is the scenario for those who intend to come to January to do the thesis project? You know, Bianca, if I knew the answer to that, I have spoken to the staff that have proposed to take students for thesis next year, and I have said they need to be very upfront with the students that the scenario might be that you cannot get access to our laboratories. We will not be able to access our laboratories. So and it's not that we're saying, oh, it's just the IMBRSea students can't come in. We're not saying that. What we're saying is there will be limited amounts of, or there probably will be limited amounts of access to laboratory facilities within GMIT. In that we have to manage existing research students, you undergraduate students that access our laboratory situations. And if social distancing rules are being implemented that require 1.5 or 2 meters, and we don't know what that's going to be, that affects our ability to use the laboratories. We have to consider things like shifts, for example, rotas. So there may be a team of 5 or 6 people from completely unrelated projects that end up having to work together, and that's those people come in, and then at the end of that week, the laboratory is cleaned, and another team of people may be able to come in. I mean, you know, some of the labs, we may be only able to fit 2 or 3 or 4 people in. So I have encouraged my colleagues to engage with students that want to do projects with them, whereby they could do projects that used existing data, or that they could do projects that entailed field work, gathering field data without a laboratory component, provided the field data and the field work has been risk assessed appropriately, and then go from there. So yeah, it's something I'm conscious we haven't provided certainty on yet, because I'm debating it with my colleagues. I have asked them to make decisions. I've asked them to engage with the students, and once they have, we will then be issuing what we think is the best and most consistent advice to students in that regard. Does that answer your question, Bianca? Okay. Any other questions? And you can ask Julia a question as well, and Julia will answer freely. We've got thick skins in GMIT. If Julia thinks we need to improve, Julia will be well able to tell us.
Well, maybe I can just say that I think actually, I mean, I can mostly talk for the management track since that's what I did, but I think given the modules there, it will actually be very possible to do them well online, I think, because there's so much based on like discussion and really participation in smaller groups, which I think works really well also in a smaller online setting. And I agree with what Ian said, that I think the fact that it's now already clear that it's going to be online, I think I'm quite optimistic that this will be organized very well, because there's a lot of time to, I mean, to make sure it will be, yeah, done well now. And I think it's true what Ian said about, well, people are kind of approachable, and it's good to organize things in smaller groups. So I think you'll know exactly kind of what you'll get, and I think it will be good to work around, especially once you have a schedule for how things are going to be. Yeah.
Thanks for that. Thank you.
Okay, then let's finish. Thank you very much, Ian, Katie, Julia, for your time. Thank you for all the students. It will be online. I'm gonna upload it today probably, and all the students that didn't got the chance to watch it can watch it later. Okay.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Have a nice weekend.
Bye.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Julia.